Welcome to Crimson Clues, where shadows hide secrets and silence reveals the truth. Every story is a puzzle, and every clue takes you closer to the answer. Subscribe now, join the hunt, and let the mystery begin. Chapter 1. A Grandmother's Worry. The afternoon sun cast a gentle glow over Mayfair as Poirot and I stepped out of the taxi outside the Winslow townhouse. The stately Victorian residence stood proud, with their ivy-draped walls and tall windows radiating an air of refined elegance. The distant hum of London streets was softened here, giving the place a serene, almost timeless quality. Quite a handsome house, wouldn't you say, Poirot? I tipped my hat slightly as I took in the scene, Pooh's sharp eyes flickering over the facade. We Hastings are home of distinction, and I wager one with tales to tell. The butler ushered us inside with practiced grace, leading us through a marble-floored foyer and up a grand staircase. The interior was a blend of opulence and warmth, with polished wood, plush carpets, and family portraits on the walls. It felt lived in, a testament to generations of care. We entered the drawing room where Lady Margaret Winslow awaited. She rose to greet us, a striking woman with silver hair coiled neatly on top of her head, and a posture that spoke of both dignity and resilience. Her piercing blue eyes softened when they met ours, revealing a well of affection beneath her composed exterior. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but rich with warmth. "Thank you for coming, and this is Captain Hastings, my associate." Poirot responded with a courteous bow and inclined my head. "A pleasure, Lady Margaret. Please do sit," she said, gesturing to two armchairs by a crackling fire. The room was adorned with velvet drapes and a grand piano, but my gaze lingered on a portrait above the mantel. A young man with a bright, mischievous smile. Poirot settled into his chair, hands clasped neatly. "Madame Pretel, what brings such urgency to your summons?" Lady Margaret's hands tightened briefly before she spoke, her eyes drifting to the portrait. "It is my grandson Edward. He has been missing for 2 weeks, and my heart tells me something is terribly wrong." Missing Pugh's tone was gentle, encouraging her to continue. "Yes," she said, nodding. "The police have been informed, but they brush it off as a young man's whim. Some lark he'll tire of soon enough. But Edward is not so thoughtless. He would never leave me to fret like this." Pugh leaned forward slightly, his voice soft with empathy. "Tell me of Edward, madame. What sort of young man is he to you?" A tender smile curved her lips, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Edward is 25, a darling of society, charming, kind, and full of spirit. I've helped raise him since he was a boy, you see, after his parents were taken. From us he was such a lively child, always dashing about inventing grand adventures. Once, when he was perhaps 7, he climbed the oak in the garden and declared himself king of a hidden realm. I found him there, perched like a little monarch, and he beamed at me, saying, 'Grandma, I've saved a throne for you.'" She paused, her smile fading as she gazed at the portrait. Those were simpler days when his adventures were mere games, now his silence. It is as though that spirited boy has vanished, and I fear for what may have become of him. Her voice trembled, slightly, the warmth of the memory giving way to the chill of her present worry. "He's not without his troubles, talk of gambling debts, a romance some call unwise, but he is my dearest treasure." His silence now, it cuts me deeply. I felt a swell of sympathy for her. It was plain to see how much she'd shaped Edward's life, and how fiercely she loved him still. "When did you last see him?" Poirot asked, his tone soothing yet precise. "At a gala." 2 weeks ago at the Dorchester Hotel," she replied. "He seemed distracted, though he tried to hide it. He left early, mentioning a meeting with someone, and the next day." She reached into her sleeve and produced a folded note. This arrived. Poirot unfolded the paper with care, and I peered over his shoulder. The words were scrawled hastily. "Must go away for a while. Don't worry. Signed, E." He studied it a moment before, murmuring, most curious, "This is all he left you?" "Yes," she said, her voice quavering. "It's not like him at all. He knows how I worry. Ever since he was small, we've shared everything. He'd call or write properly if he could. I've been more than his grandmother. I've been his guide, his confidant. This silence frightens me." Miss Poirot's gaze softened, reflecting her evident devotion. "Madame, your bond with him is clear, and it is a beacon that will lead us to him. I shall take this case. But first, might. I see his room there may be hints the police have missed. Of course, she said, rising with a mix of relief and resolve. She led us upstairs to Edward's chamber, a well-kept space with a broad bed, a cluttered writing desk and a wardrobe full of tailored suits. A faint trace of cologne hung in the air, and a novel lay open on the bedside table. A bookmark nestled within. Poirot moved with his usual meticulousness, pausing at the desk to lift a torn scrap, an invitation to the gala, ripped unevenly. "Interrunt?" he muttered, slipping it into his pocket. "What's that, Poirot?" I asked, curious. "An invitation, Hastings, but torn." "Why, I wonder, perhaps he was upset," I suggested. "Perhaps," Poirot replied, though his tone hinted at deeper thoughts. He then uncovered a photograph beneath a stack of books, a young woman, bold and striking, her smile enigmatic. And this, he mused, holding it up. Who might she be? A sweetheart? Maybe, I offered, noting her beauty. Lady Margaret leaned closer, her brow furrowing. "That is Eliza Montague," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. "I've met her at social gatherings, Charles Montague's wife. But why would Edward hide her photograph? He knows I'm aware of their friendship." "Hidden away," Poirot observed, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "A secret, perhaps even from you." Madame Lady Margaret's expression tightened. "He has always been open with me, or so I thought. This troubles me." I could see the concern deepening in her eyes, and I felt a pang of sympathy. Even in their close bond, it seemed Edward had kept some things to himself. Finally, Poirot spotted a small key tucked beneath the novel, its metal gleaming faintly. "And this, madam, what does it open, lady?" Margaret frowned, puzzled. "I don't know, it's unfamiliar to me." "Another piece," Poe said thoughtfully, pocketing it. I watched, marveling at how he gathered these fragments like a master weaver at his loom. Back in the drawing room, Lady Margaret's voice carried a fragile hope. "What do you think, Miss Poirot?" "I think, madame, that there is much beneath the surface. I shall start at the Dorchester, retracing his steps from the gala. If anything else occurs to you, you will contact me." He handed her a card. His name in elegant script. She took it with a grateful nod, then added, "There is a ball tomorrow evening at the Savoy Misero. Many of the same guests from the Dorchester Gala will be in attendance. It might be an opportunity for you to observe them, perhaps even speak with some who saw Edward that night." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "An excellent suggestion, madame. The social world. It often loosens tongues and reveals much. I shall be there, thank you," she said, her voice steady once more. "For the first time in days, I feel a flicker of hope." Poirot smiled gently. "Hope is a precious ally, madame, and with Poirot it is well-founded. Au revoir." As we stepped outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting a warm light over the street. Edward Winslow's disappearance was a riddle. Gambling debts, a mysterious romance, a curt note, and already Pooh's keen mind was at work. The torn invitation, the hidden photograph of Eliza Montague, the key, each a clue in his deft hands. As we left the property, I couldn't resist asking, "What do you make of it, Poirot?" He gave me that familiar, enigmatic smile. "It is a beginning, Hastings, a thread to tug, but rest assured mon ami Poirot will unravel this mystery, and Edward shall be found." I nodded, buoyed by his certainty. With Poirot leading the way, I had every confidence that Lady Margaret's beloved grandson would soon be safe and their loving bond restored. Chapter 2. The Gala's Glitter. The Savoy ballroom glittered like a jewel against the London sky, with crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow across the polished parquet floor. The orchestra's waltzes filled the air, weaving between the rustle of silk skirts and the clink of champagne flutes. The scene was absolute elegance, a tribute to the grandeur of 1930s high society. But as I stood alongside Poirot, I felt a peculiar chill, as if the light covered something malevolent. Poirot's sharp eyes scanned the room, his head tilted slightly in that familiar feline fashion. "A beautiful spectacle," Nespar Hastings mumbled, "but underneath the glitter, mon ami, there is a shadow. Do you not sense it?" I peered around, taking in the swirling dancers and the immaculately dressed people. "It's all really stunning," I admitted, "but I guess you're correct. There's a certain stiffness about it all." He nodded with a slight smile on his lips. "Primon, in such gatherings the truth lies behind the most polished facades. High society is a stage on which jealousy and ambition dance as closely as waltzers. Come, let us explore this sparkling web. We floated through the crowd, offering polite nods to those who recognized him. Lady Margaret's idea had been apt. Many faces from Edward's last known night at the Dorchester Gala were here, perfect for observation. As we walked, Poirot's attention fixed on a woman by the great staircase, her posture straight as a statue. Lady Beatrice Harrowve, he remarked softly, was not a challenge for Hastings' inheritance, but for the admiration of the elite. Her envy of Edward's appeal is whispered far and wide, creating a social contest where prestige is the prize. Note her firm grip on that purse, as if it carries her own soul. Lady Beatrice was striking with her silver-streaked hair brushed high and glittering emerald gown. Her gloved hands grasped her bag with a fierceness that clashed with her cool look. As we approached, her sharp eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, her voice cold as frost, "I hardly expected to find you among the frivolous. Your reputation as a detective is well known, and society loves a good mystery. What brought you here?" Poirot bowed. "Madame, even a detective must sometimes enjoy society's delights. And are you finding the evening to your taste?" Her lips thinned. "As much as one can, with Edward Winslow's absence hovering over us. His abrupt disappearance has been the talk of the season. Some claim he fled his debts. Others mutter about darker things, while some appear willing to forget." Her attention shifted to the dance floor, where laughing rang out. "We have a troubling situation," Poirot agreed. "You saw him at the Dorchester." "I understand." Her eyes fluttered briefly. "He was preoccupied. Always one for theatrics, that boy." Poirot's tone was soft and inviting more. She waved a dismissive hand. "Debts diances. Such are the dramas of youth. I think he's fled to avoid his troubles." Poirot raised his brow as he said, "Debts. You have heard specifics. One hears whispering." She replied calmly, "Gambling losses without a doubt, but I'm no tale-bearer." "For your natural aspect," Poirot stated with a smile. "Your discretion is greatly appreciated." As we walked away, he mumbled debt a thread to follow, but her reluctance to admit it intrigues me. Next we approached Charles Montague, a solitary figure brooding by the bar with his whiskey glass glinting in the light. His face bore the weight of unspoken frustrations, and his black eyes met ours with a flicker of displeasure. "Monsieur Montague," Poirot welcomed cordially. "I am Poirot, and this is Captain Hastings." Montague muttered, "I know you. Your name is not unknown in these circles. Inspector Rudd mentioned you once. What's your business is simply a question." Poirot said, "You chatted with Edward Winslow at the Dorchester." I'm told Montague's jaw was clenched during the heated exchange. A petty spat, nothing more, yet it drew attention. Poirot pressed softly. "Might I know because it's private?" Montague snapped down his drink. "I have no involvement in his disappearance, if that's your game." Poirot raised his hand. "I desire simply clarity. Ensure Edward's mood that night." "How did he appear?" Montague sighed, slightly rattled, babbling about obligations and other romantic crap. "I commanded him to shape up." "Romantic nonsense?" Pooh's voice was quiet. With whom Montague's gaze hardened. "I won't say ask elsewhere, Mercy." Pooh said undeterred as we went away. I murmured, "He's hiding something, isn't he?" Hastings was a man of secrets and temper, perhaps. Our path soon intersected with Reginald Fairfax and Eliza Montague, an arresting pair. Fairfax, a banker with a sparkling smile, oozed appeal, his eyes darting as if measuring the room's worth. Eliza, resplendent in pale blue silk, appeared vulnerable. Her laughter was brittle as she nervously looked at her husband at the bar. "Miss Supro," Fairfax said in a friendly tone, "a pleasure to see you in such fine company. The Savoy hosts a splendid affair, does it not?" "Indeed," Poirot responded, smiling. Fairfax grinned. "The orchestra is especially good this evening." "Quite right, and the company is what actually shines." Natural Mantro agreed, his attention straying to Eliza. "I heard Edward Winslow was among the dancers at the Dorchester. A charming young man, by all accounts." Eliza's fan stilled her voice faintly. "Yes, he danced with me briefly." Fairfax shrugged. "Edward was usually the life of the party, and he's probably off on some adventure right now." Perhaps Poirot asked, "Did he seem troubled to you, monsieur?" Fairfax's smile slipped slightly. "Not overly, though." He glanced at Eliza. "He mentioned a debt, but I wasn't sure if he was owed money or not," she said hesitantly. But he laughed it off, a debt to whom Pooh questioned. She shook her head. He didn't say, just that it was nothing to worry about. Typical Edward, Fairfax cut in contemptuous tone, constantly evading scrapes. Pooh grinned. Mercy, both of you. Your insights are quite useful. As we went away, he remarked, date again, Hastings. And Eliza's discomfort. It says volumes. The evening unfolded with Poirot weaving through the crowd, his ears tuned to the murmurs of the elite. He paused beside a cluster of potted palms, overhearing a woman in a feathered bonnet mutter to her friend, Edward's debts are no secret, darling. They claim he owes half the clubs in London. And that affair with Eliza Charles is livid. I hear Poirot's eyes glittered as he caught my look. Gossip in Hastings. It is the lifeblood of society, and frequently the key to truth. Later, as we toured the room, Poirot's attention was drawn to Reginald Fairfax once more. He was near a shadowed table, speaking in low tones to a stranger. Fairfax's hands trembled slightly as he flung fervent glances around the room, his polished charm fading. Their interaction was brief, and when Fairfax moved away, his posture indicated attention and sparked Poirot's interest. Poirot's eyes increased his keen awareness to human behavior, noting every nuance. Most intriguing, Hastings, he muttered softly. Monsieur Fairfax is nervous. It may indicate guilt or fear. Observe the tremble in his hands and the covert aspect of the interaction. This is not the confidence of an innocent man. Who was he speaking to? I asked, my curiosity rising. Pooh's eyes narrowed in concentration. That, Monami, is a question worth pursuing. A man so uneasy in such an environment hides something, which we must investigate. The music swelled, but Poirot's concentration was concentrated on the suspects. Lady Beatrix's chilly poise, Charles's sombre silence, Fairfax's peculiar charm, and Eliza's frail grace. There is much yet veiled, he whispered softly, but the little grey cells they are at work. I nodded, sensing the depths of the enigma. The gala's glitter gleamed brightly, but the shadows held secrets Poirot was determined to reveal. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Wind. The Chelsea tea room was a refuge of peaceful beauty, with its walls covered with floral paper that appeared to bloom in the mild morning light. Delicate porcelain cups clinked gently on saucers, and the murmur of discreet chatter blended with the patter of rain on the windows. The scene was one of cozy sophistication. However, as I sat opposite Hercule Poirot, I couldn't shake a feeling of disquiet, as if the air itself held secrets too weighty for its frail charm. The previous evening at the Savoy Gala, Poirot had noticed Eliza Montague's uneasiness and discreetly requested a meeting through a mutual acquaintance, alleging a matter of considerable urgency. She had agreed, however, unwillingly to join us here. Poirot's quick gaze wandered the room before lingering on the entryway where Eliza emerged, her silhouette framed briefly by the drizzle outside. She was a study in strained beauty, pale as porcelain, her blue gown clinging to her delicate form, her gloved hands gripping the strap of her purse. Her gaze darted about, searching us out, and when they found Poirot, a flicker of trepidation crossed her face. Madame Montague, Poirot said, rising with his customary bow, you are so nice to join us. Her lips curved into a weak, tremulous grin. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I could scarcely refuse. Pray sit, Poirot requested, indicating the chair beside him. A cup of tea may help with a variety of ailments. She nodded, settling into the seat with grace that was marred by rigidity. The waitress poured the tea, and Eliza's fingers hovered over her cup, stroking its edge as if hesitant to take it completely. Her eyes remained fixated on the golden liquid, avoiding ours. Poirot leaned nearer, his voice a low murmur. Madam, I need to discuss a delicate issue. Edward Winslow. He was more than just an acquaintance to you, wasn't he? Eliza's palm caught her breath. We were friends, she whispered, her tone scarcely audible. Friends? Poirot's gaze never left her, and yet the whispers of society suggest a deeper connection. Tell me, madame, is there truth in these rumors? Her color increased, and she looked aside, her voice wavering. I cannot deny that. We were involved for a while, but it was a mistake. A momentary silliness, I assure you, monsieur. I had no part in his disappearance. Poirot's demeanor softened, but his scrutiny remained intense. I do not accuse, madame, I only want to understand. "When did you last see him at the Dorchester Gala?" she said, her fingers tightening on the cup. "We danced once." He seemed distracted. He departed early, stating a meeting with whom. Poirot kept his tone light. "I don't know," she responded, shaking her head. "He wouldn't tell me, but he was uneasy." His smile did not reach his eyes. Poirot nodded carefully. "And after that night, did he reach out?" she muttered, her gaze falling. "Nothing. I thought perhaps he'd gone away, as others have suggested. But the message Poirot inserted easily. You've heard about it then? He left this one for Lady Margaret." Eliza's eyes widened slightly. "Yes, through the grapevine, society discusses Monsieur. They say he scribbled a brief message advising her not to worry, but it seems unlike him to go so abruptly." Poirot's brows arched. "Indeed. And this he produced from his pocket, the ripped gala invitation from Edward's room. Its edges ragged. I found it in his quarters, madam." Torn as though in haste or despair. Do you know why Eliza's eyes brightened? A spark of recognition burning briefly. I couldn't answer. He never spoke about it. Poirot smiled weakly, but his gaze pierced. "And this snapshot is concealed amid his books. Why would he conceal it if your friendship was known?" She bit her lip. Her voice was a thread. Perhaps he scared that someone might find it. Someone who would not understand. "He was always cautious and protective of our secret." "Someone like your husband, Charles," Poirot offered gently. Ayla's composure shook her words, flowing forth, her voice tearing with anguish. "Yes, Charles. He is a proud man, if he knew it would ruin both him and me. But Edward and I stopped it that night at the gala. He insisted it was best that there were complications." Her voice cracked with tears in her eyes. "He was the one who wanted to stop to protect us both. I didn't understand at first, but he was emphatic. He said it was too hazardous to continue." Complications. Poirot's tone was encouraging. Poirot's fingers steepled, his attention heightening, but he was terrified. He kept glancing around as if shadowed, as if he knew something was coming that he couldn't avoid. "Did you see anyone unusual?" That evening she paused and nodded weakly. A tall, dark-haired man with a scar on his cheek stood near the cloakroom. Edward froze as their eyes connected, and the man gave him a look that chilled me. When I asked, Edward brushed it aside, but I could see he was shaken. "Most intriguing," Poirot murmured. "A description worth mentioning. And speaking of financial problems, madam, did Edward ever discuss debts or pressures relating to money?" She dabbed her tears hesitantly. "Regarding our argument last night, I want to set things straight. I don't believe Edward ever owed anyone money. There were some gaming debts once, but he assured me they were repaid in full. Any talk of debts beyond that is simply hearsay, nothing more." She paused, her voice softening as she recalls a memory. "Now that I think about it, he did remark in passing that some people owed money to his grandma. He looked deeply concerned by it, but he never named them." "To whom did he refer?" Poirot inquired. "He did not specify," she responded, her voice lowering to a whisper. "But I thought it disturbed him significantly, and I once saw him in a tense debate with Reginald Fairfax at a dinner a few weeks ago. It appeared to be about money problems, and Edward was visibly unsettled." "Fairfax?" Poirot repeated, his eyes glinting, the financier, a name that begins to reverberate. He paused, his mind turning inward. "This mention of Fairfax and obligations is really curious, considering I only saw his shaking hands and furtive stares during that private exchange with a stranger last night at the gala. A man so uneasy conceals a load." A riddle begins to shape. Eliza's hand shook as she lifted her cup. "The tea untouched, please, Moreau. Find him. I worry something awful has happened. I will attempt to do so." Pooh assured her, his tone strong yet compassionate. "One final inquiry, madam. A small silver key was found in his room. Do you know its purpose?" She frowned, puzzled. "No, I have no idea." "Very well," Poirot said, rising. "You have been most forthcoming. If anything else happens to you, you will notify me." "Of course," she answered, steadying herself. "Thank you, monsieur." As we stepped into the rain, Poirot's voice was low and introspective. "A scarred stranger and threats from a financier, threads multiply Hastings." I nodded as the tea room's serene facade faded behind us. The rain beat a calm rhythm to the anxiety Eliza's words had caused, and I knew Pooh's small grey cells were already weaving the clues into a tapestry only he could yet see. Chapter 4. A Secret Exchange. The fog grew as darkness stretched its heavy veil over London, enveloping the city in an ethereal haze that seemed to whisper secrets. Poe and I were poised outside our lodgings, the distant bustle of the metropolis muffled by mist. Earlier that day, Poirot was restless, his mind racing with the threads of Edward Winslow's disappearance. He had confided in me his growing suspicions about Reginald Fairfax, the financier, whose name had appeared in our investigations. "Hastings," he had stated the tense conduct of Fairfax at the gala, his quivering hands, his private exchange with a stranger, and Madame Montague's statement of Fairfax talking with Edward over debts. These aren't coincidences. Tonight we will watch him. Thus we lurked in the shadows, awaiting Fairfax's movements. We tightened our coats against the damp chill. Poirot's sharp eye darted across the street, latching on a figure moving away with intentional stealth. "Mon ami," he mumbled, his voice a conspiratorial thread. "Observe Monsieur Fairfax. He moves like a shadow through the night." I followed his line of sight and noticed Reginald Fairfax, his tall form evident even in the twilight, strolling briskly away from his apartment, with his head turned occasionally as though apprehensive of pursuit. Most curious, Poirot noted his tone was loaded with intrigue. This morning Madame Montague spoke about Edward's debts and his dispute with Fairfax. All these facts begin to weave a pattern. Why does he venture out now under the cover of night? A thrill coursed through me. "Shall we follow Puro Precisimo?" he responded, his eyes gleaming with determination. The little grey cells, they detect a thread demanding to be unravelled. "Come, Hastings, let us pursue this conundrum." We began our stealthy pursuit, keeping a cautious distance as Fairfax moved through the fog-laden streets. The transition from Mayfair's sophisticated elegance to Soho's rough allure was palpable. The air became thick with cold smoke, and a faint whiff of jazz wafted from unknown places. Gas lamps flickered like weary guards, their light eaten by the mist, producing an eerie radiance on the small byways. Fairfax travelled with the confidence of someone well versed with these shadowed paths, his steps solid on the uneven cobblestones. We followed him, ducking into doorways and pausing behind carts whenever his eyes shifted back. My pulse raced with the adrenaline of the pursuit, and I marvelled at Poirot's nimbleness. His diminutive stature and cautious feet allowed him to move stealthily, depending more on cunning than athletic skill. Fairfax eventually twisted into a restricted alley, its entrance surrounded by shuttered shops. Poirot raised his hand, and we strained against the moist brick, staring into the window. The alley was a tunnel of fog, illuminated only by a single gas lamp that burned feebly. Fairfax encountered a guy enveloped in shadow, a man whose hat obscured his features, making him a phantom in the mist. "Remain here," Hastings, Poirot murmured. "I must catch their words." He edged closer, his movement as subtle as the fog itself. I held my breath, straining to hear the mist masked every sound, but eventually the quiet buzz of voices reached me. "Here's the payment, as agreed." Fairfax's voice was silky but filled with intensity. "Ensure the Winslow boy remains out of sight." The dark figure rasped, "But the boss needs promises." "Inform him that the situation has been handled." Fairfax cut in sharply. "Now go." The man accepted the briefcase. Fairfax professed, then vanished into the fog with practiced speed. Fairfax remained inspecting the alley before turning and retracing his steps toward the street. "Per returned to my side, his expression sad. Winslow, lad," he repeated quietly. "So Fairfax is involved in Edward's fate. But for what reason? Abduction, perhaps. I ventured, my heart beating. That briefcase money, undoubtedly. We agreed on a payoff, but in order to silence or injure, we needed to go further." As Fairfax passed us unaware of our presence, Poirot's gaze followed him. "He goes to his office, I believe." We resumed our pursuit, using the fog as our protection as we wove through the labyrinthine streets. Fairfax's office occupied a tiny edifice, wedged between a Tor and a tobacconist, with its windows dark but for a solitary glimmer on the upper floor. He entered, and soon a shadow stirred behind the curtains. Poirot's lips twisted with determination. We must see what he guards so closely. However, when I inquired, the door would be locked. "Mon ami," Poirot responded, indicating a short path beside the building. "There is a back entrance that may be less safe. My strength is in observation, not acrobatics. Let us pray for their carelessness." I nodded, happy that Poirot's scheme relied on brains rather than physical accomplishments. We crept to the back, where a little door stood ajar, possibly left so by a thoughtless clerk. Poirot's eyes shone with joy as we snuck inside and climbed the rickety steps with caution. In the workplace, sumptuous carpets and mahogany furniture clashed with scattered documents and ledgers. Fairfax stood behind a filing cabinet, searching over documents with a worried brow. As we peered from behind a towering bookshelf, Poirot's eyes glittered as he selected a handful and deftly turned the dial of a tiny safe. He muttered something really important. Fairfax removed a sheath of papers from the safe, his face deepening as he studied them. With a muttered oath, he struck a match and laid the flame on the document's edge. The fire blazed, and he threw the flaming sheets into a metal bin. Now Hastings Poirot suggested we must meet him, but gently Pooh stepped forward, his tone calm yet forceful. "Mr. Fairfax, we must speak." Fairfax turned suddenly, his eyes narrowing as he looked at us. "Oh, how dare you intrude?" Norm Poirot interrupted, his voice steady. "It is you who must respond. What have you burned as evidence of your misdeeds?" Fairfax's eyes raced to the bin where flames devoured the papers. "This is my own domain. You have no permission." "Au contraire," Pooh responded, advancing. "When it comes to Edward Winslow's fate, I have every right to Edward's name." Fairfax's composure trembled, and I knew nothing about it. No, Poirot's focus was unwavering. "So why did you pay a man in Soho to keep the Winslow boy hidden?" Fairfax blanched his mouth, working soundlessly. Ida Poirot pressed forward, his voice harsh. "And what do these papers reveal?" "Fraud may be against Lady Margaret's riches." Fairfax's hands quiver, but he clinched his teeth to recover some control. "You've overstepped, Poirot. Whatever you think you've seen, it's not what it seems." "Then explain, monsieur." Poirot wanted a firm tone. Fairfax inhaled heavily, his shoulders slumped. "I've been managing funds for Lady Margaret's accounts, among others. Edward found irregularities. He confronted me and threatened to expose me. I needed time to resolve the situation, so you paid someone to intercede." Pooh's voice sounded cold. Fairfax's jaw tightened, and his gaze flickered to the door. "You're approaching Pooh, and I have no desire in intervening in anyone's business. I'm telling you that you have it all wrong." Poirot's eyes sharpened, examining Fairfax's agitated manner. "Your denial is fast, monsieur, but it allows room for curiosity." I stepped forward with an apprehensive tone. "If something happened to Edward Fairfax, we'll find out one way or another." Fairfax turned away, his silence thick with unspoken weight. Poirot nodded to me and we departed, leaving him to his brooding thoughts. Outside, the fog appeared to tighten its grasp, a physical weight on us. "He is cautious," Hastings Pooh muttered, "and such caution frequently conceals more than it discloses. We must proceed with prudence." Chapter 5. The puzzle takes shape. The Gentlemen's Club at St. James's stood as a bulwark of tradition, with its thick oak doors a silent guard against the tumult of the contemporary world. As Pooh and I passed its doorway on that afternoon, a haze of cigar smoke welcomed us, snaking languidly through the air and blending with the rich aroma of ancient leather. The vast space was littered with deep couches, embracing the city's elite in hushed conclaves. Portraits of veteran members peered down from the walls, their stern visages a monument to the club's legendary past, while the golden lion, rampant of its crest, sparkled over a crackling hearth. "Mon ami," Poirot mumbled, his voice softly beneath the room's subdued hum, "observe how the stillness here is not just for politeness. It is the quiet of authority, secrets fiercely guarded. These men are not used to scrutiny." I shuffled nervously, feeling the weight of unseen gaze. "It's as if we've entered a fortress. Poirot, they are watching us like hawks." Poirot's lips formed a slight smile. "Precedes Hastings a stronghold of privilege, where the elite conceal their transgressions behind closed doors. In such a situation, the truth must be coaxed out with care and guile. Our mission was twofold: to search Edward Winslow's locker and confront Charles Montague, a frequent patron whose name had surfaced in our inquiries. Poirot had secured the cooperation of the club steward, a stern mustachioed figure whose air of authority brooked no dissent, and we were led to a private chamber where Charles awaited. He sat in a high-backed chair, his brooding eyes fixated on the dancing fire. A glass of whiskey rested in his palm, the amber liquid reflecting the light. He did not stand as we arrived, offering only a brief bow. "Poirot," he muttered, his voice harsh and restrained. "What brings you here?" Pooh sat opposite him, his posture faultless. Mr. Montague, I want to clarify some things about Edward Winslow. You spoke with him at the Dorchester Gala. Was it a conversation that drew eyes as we described in our prior encounter? Charles's jaw tightened. His fingers tightened around the glass. Yes, we chatted. I told you it was a trivial affair. Poirot's gaze remained steady, his voice quiet yet probing. However, given Edward's disappearance, even trivial matters may be significant. You said it was about romantic foolishness. Might I know more? Charles breathed sharply, his eyes narrowed. It was about Eliza, my wife. I had heard tales of their connection, so I told him to keep his distance. Poirot leaned forward, his countenance unreadable. And his response? He denied it, of course. This Charles vehemently protested it was nonsense. But I could see the truth in his eyes. He relished teasing me. Poirot nodded seriously. After the gala, I believe you left early. Where did you go? Charles' face stiffened, his voice clipped. I went home. My crew can testify I was there by midnight. Poirot stated that his tone was neutral. However, I met with them, and their stories do not align. Some recall your presence. Others insist you were not seen until morning. A curious discrepancy. None Poirot's statement was a calculated bluff designed to unsettle Charles and observe his reaction, even though he had not yet spoken to the staff. Charles's hands clenched his, knuckles whitening. They're mistaken or confused. I was home, and I tell you I have no reason to lie. Poirot's fingers steepled, his visage cool. The truth is a fragile thing. It does not bend to haste or passion. You say you had nothing to do with his disappearance. Charles's voice rose with irritation, I swear it. Poirot rose with a nod, saying, Whatever happened to him is not on my head. For now I'll accept your word. Mercy, Mazie Montague. As we started to go, Poirot hesitated, his gaze shifting to the steward. Pardon, Missy, but I must freshen up before we travel. May I use the facilities? The steward nodded curtly, of course, Moo. Poirot this way. Poirot glanced at me, his eyes flashing with unsaid meaning. Wait for me here in Hastings. I will not be long. I settled into a chair, my mind racing as Poirot followed the steward out of the room. I realized his plea was a fake. His genuine goal was to investigate Edward's locker without drawing notice. His subtlety was masterful as always. Minutes after, Poirot returned his inscrutable expression. Let's leave, mon ami, he whispered softly. We left the club, the huge doors closing behind us with a dull thud. As we moved into the street, Poirot's hand slipped into his pocket, pulling a little leather-bound ledger. A most intriguing find. Hastings, he muttered, his eyes shining. You found that in Edward's locker? I asked, pulse quickening. Oui, Poirot responded, looking through the papers. But first recall the small silver key we discovered in Edward's room. It unlocked a small safe within his locker, revealing this ledger. I leaned closer and noticed the scrolled notes in Edward's hand. A financial ledger inscribed with his annotations. See here these entries. They demonstrate anomalies in Fairfax's operations. It appears Edward was gathering proof of fraud. So he was about to expose Fairfax? Precisimro murmured, his voice low. This ledger is the thread that binds Fairfax to Edward's fate. A reason for silence? Perhaps. As we walked away, the ledger remained in Poirot's pocket, a concrete link to the mystery's heart, Fairfax's deception. As Edward vanished, the puzzle began to take shape. However, the shadows of this privileged enclave became even larger. Chapter 6. The Vigil's Veil. The Winslow drawing-room shimmered with austere beauty as evening settled on its walls, aglow with the tremulous light of numerous candles. Edward's image ruled over the mantel with a rakish grin, a silent phantom in the growing gloom, velvet curtains laden with the scent of time-framed fogged windows through which the muffled pulse of 1930s London barely penetrated. A phonograph hummed a sorrowful tune, its notes weaving through the air like a lament, binding the collected spirits in a solemn yet strained vigil. Poe had staged this vigil not only as a memorial, but as a purposeful gathering, a platform upon which to assemble all the suspects and analyze their every reaction. Lady Margaret Winslow stood at the center of the room, her silver hair a beacon in the flickering light, and her severe visage softened by the weight of her purpose. Before her sat the suspects, whose presence was a tribute to societal responsibility, or possibly something deeper. Hercule Poirot, diminutive but dominating, occupied a chair near the fire, his emerald eyes glinting with the clarity of a cat preparing to pounce. Captain Hastings lingered at his side, my notebook open, but my eyes was pulled to the tension that coiled around us like a living creature. Mesdames, Lady Margaret, began her voice, ringing with a grandmother's affection and a matriarch's resolve. We meet this night to commemorate my Edward and pray for his return. If any of you have information that could lead to my Edward's return, I ask you to give it now, so that we can end this agony. Her words fell like stones into quiet water rippling across the room. Lady Beatrix Hargrove sat erect, her fingers twisting her pearls with a restless vigor, the gentle clack of the beads a counterpoint to the silence. Charles Montague stood aloof, his brooding eyes locked on the hearth, avoiding any touch as if the flames could clear him. Reginald Fairfax's smile remained as the financier's mask stretched thin across his features. The flickering of his glance exposes a frail mask. Eliza Montague wiped her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Her delicate beauty was tarnished by a trembling that indicated more than just anguish. Poirot's head tilted, and his military moustache quivered softly as he observed. Most curious, Hastings murmured, his voice a thread meant just for me. Each reacts, but none talks. The petition of Lady Margaret, it stirs the conscience, or perhaps the fear. I nodded and jotted a note. Guilt, do you suppose, he murmured, or defy the little grey cells that they think about? Lady Margaret's voice raised again, tremulous but firm. Edward was no ordinary boy to me. He was my joy, my pride. We've had an unbreakable link since he was a child, and if he's lost, so am I. Please help me bring him back. Her grief penetrated the room, and the suspects shifted. Lady Beatrix's pearls clicked louder, her lips pursed as if to hide a retort. Charles's shoulders tightened, his hands clenched at his sides. Fairfax's smile flickered, a bead of sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. Eliza's tears spilled anew, and her eyes moved to her husband with a flicker of dread. Poirot's stare hardened. His fingers steepled. Observe Hastings, he whispered softly. The plea, it is a mirror. They see themselves reflected, and some do not like the image. Before I could respond, he rose with grace that belied his stature, drawing all eyes. Madame et Monsieur, he said, his tone calm yet resonant. The vigil is a moment for truth and sadness, and Hercule Poirot has unearthed a piece of this puzzle that cannot be overlooked. From his pocket, he retrieved the small leather-bound ledger, its pages marked with Edward's precise notes. This, he claimed, holding it aloft, was discovered in Monsieur Edward's locker at his club. It contains notes that could be the key to his disappearance. A murmur of concern spread around the room. Lady Beatrix's fingers remained steady on her pearls, her gaze narrowed with a spark of calculation. Charles lifted his gaze from the flames, his brow furrows in perplexity. Fairfax's smile froze, his eyes flying to the ledger with a flicker of recognition. Eliza's sobs became weak, her handkerchief pressed to her lips, and she watched Poirot with wide, scared eyes. Poirot's eyes travelled over the assembly, registering each emotion with a keen and unwavering look. This ledger, he said in his measured tone, is a mute witness to the circumstances that led to Edward's disappearance. Its contents will be revealed in due time. Fairfax's calm slipped. His voice was a frail whisper. What does it contain? Poirot's eyes penetrated him. Mr. Fairfax, that is the question, isn't it? But the answer will come shortly, along with the truth. The room went silent. The candle flames flickered fiercely, as if moved by his words. Lady Margaret's eyes shimmered with hope and horror. Her hands gripped tightly. Lady Beatrix's face tightened her mask of interest, giving way to a steely resolve. Charles's skepticism intensified, his gaze flickering between Poirot and Fairfax. Eliza's terror grew tangible, her handkerchief shaking in her fingers. Poirot turned to face the assembly, his voice measured. The vigil binds us in pain and obligation. Someone here knows more than they acknowledge. I urge you to ponder on your silence, since it weighs hard on us all. He regained his seat, his demeanor placid yet determined. The gramophone's music stuttered, then halted, leaving only the crackle of the fire and the suffocating stillness. The candlelight flashed across Edward's painting, his smile taunting the whispered truths that lingered among us. Poirot, I muttered, leaning near. You've created a spark among them. We Hastings, he responded, his eyes half closed. A spark that ignites the truth. The trap is set. Now we wait. The weight of the occasion pressed on me. The room is a hotbed of tension. Fairfax's pallor, Charles's avoidance, Eliza's fear, Beatrix's restraint. Every thread in Poirot's deft hands, the vigil's veil had split, revealing not answers but the promise of them. And I knew what followed next would bring about the reckoning. Chapter 7. The truth unveiled. The Winslow drawing-room, bathed in the tremulous glow of candlelight, had transformed from an elegant refuge to a stage for a most dismal performance. The vigil, now at its peak, held the gathering group in a grip of tension as palpable as the fog pressing against the windows. The fire in the hearth crackled and cast fitful shadows on the tense features of the suspects. Each a player in the growing scenario, Hercule Poirot stood at the room's heart, his diminutive figure exuding an authority that stopped the murmur of the phonograph now stilled. Madame Poirot began his speech with a steady tempo that pierced through the dense air. The time has come to raise the veil over this mystery. Edward Winslow, a young man of promise, has been lost to us, but I tell you, not beyond remembrance. Tonight the truth shall be revealed. He paused, his emerald eyes sweeping across the gathering. Lady Margaret Winslow sat by the fire, her hands held securely, her austere face softened by a grandmother's hope. The suspects, Lady Beatrice Harrowve, Charles Montague, Reginald Fairfax and Eliza Montague, formed a tense semicircle, their emotions creating a gallery of uneasiness. The firelight danced on Lady Beatrice's pearls. Charles's sombre expression, Fairfax's tight smile and Eliza's tear-stained cheeks. Poirot pulled the leather-bound ledger from his pocket. Its weathered edges reveal its secrets. This May is key. Found in Edward's locker at his club, it bears his notes, which indicate a remarkably sophisticated hoax, organized by one of you. A scream echoed through the room, Fairfax's smile faltering and his eyes hardening as he leaned forward. "What nonsense is this, Poirot?" He desired his voice be a fragile thread. "Nonsense, Mr. Fairfax." Poirot's tone was calm but tinged with steel. "No, it is fact. The ledger exposes anomalies in the accounts you controlled cash taken from Lady Margaret's fortune, among others. Edward discovered this error, did not he? And you, fearing exposure, intended to silence him, but not via killing Miss Army. No, Fairfax is a man of strategy. He chose to kidnap Edward to keep him alive, because he wanted to know the extent of Edward's knowledge, and whether he had shared it with others. Only then could he decide how to proceed. Fairfax's face drained of colour, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Preposterous, I have done no such thing." Poirot's gaze was intense, but the proof screams for itself. The covert deal I watched in Soho, your payment to a dark person with words of keeping the Winslow lad out of sight, and this ledger with its incriminating annotations, all point to you, Massey, as the architect of his kidnapping. Lady Margaret's voice shattered the silence, shaking with passion. "Kidnapping Edward, he is alive." We, Madame Poirot, answered, his tone relaxing. "Held captive in a warehouse owned by Monsieur Fairfax on the city's edge. Even now, Inspector, and prepares to attack this place and bring Edward home." Fairfax's serenity shattered, his voice a desperate rasp. "You have no proof. This is guesswork." No, Poirot counted, his voice rising with calm victory. "The proof is here. In the ledger, in the testimonies of those who saw you in the very warehouse where Edward languishes. But you did not act alone, did you?" He turned his eyes, locking onto Lady Beatrice Hargrove, her fingers stilled on her pearls, her face a mask of icy resolve. "Madame Hargrove," Poirot said, "you too played your part. A rival driven by jealousy of Edward's burgeoning star among the elite. Your status, your place in these aristocratic circles, was threatened by his prominence, was it not?" Lady Beatrix's lips narrowed, her voice sharper. "What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot?" "I imply nothing," Poirot said, his tone crisp. "I declare that you conspired with Fairfax to remove Edward as a rival. Your attendance at the event, while notable, was distinguished by unusual absences, moments when you snuck away unobserved, and the ledger contains entries that tie you to Fairfax's machinations. Transactions that benefited you both are concealed by your alliance." Her cheeks paled, but her defiance held. "This is slander. What entries are you speaking of?" Poirot opened the ledger, his finger following a line. "Here, madam? Transferring funds from Lady Margaret's accounts to a shell firm, one that leads back to you. Edward's notes. They highlight this very transaction and question its purpose. You thought he would expose your involvement, did not you? Lady Beatrix's expression hardened, yet a flash of panic betrayed her. You twist innocent interactions into crimes. Innocent Poirot's voice was a velvet razor. No, Madame the Ledger. It is apparent your name. Fairfax is entwined in deceit and witnesses. They locate you in Soho, meeting Fairfax in shadowed places. Your need to cling to status, to remove a rival, it drove you to collude. The room grew silent, with the crackle of the fire providing a strong contrast to the coolness of realization. His head slumped into his hands. His breath rubbed Lady Beatrix. His defiance weakened as her hands trembled. Poirot's voice raised, commanding the space. Edward was brought to a warehouse, a harsh prison owned by Fairfax where he faced death to this day. But justice is fast. Inspector takes action now to release him and apprehend those who guard him. As if called by his words, the drawing-room door burst open and Inspector Singh strode in, followed by 2 constables, their faces hard and purposeful. Perce, we've got him. Edward is safe. Fairfax's guys are in custody. Lady Margaret rose with tears flowing down her face. Safe, my Edward, yes, ma'am. Verified, his voice gruff with relief, bruised but alive. We are bringing him home. Lady Margaret's severe facade crumbled into thankfulness. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, thank you. Poirot bowed slightly, his countenance humble. It is my responsibility, madam, and now the law will deal with Monsieur Fairfax. He will be hauled into custody because his offences are confirmed beyond doubt. The constables advanced, their boots heavy on the glossy floor. Fairfax fell disheartened as they gripped his arms. Lady Beatrix's face remained a mask of cool resolve, though her hands trembled. And Madame Hargrove, Poirot said, he must face the jury for her involvement. The evidence is not yet conclusive, but it is enough to justify study. The court will decide her fate. Charles and Eliza exchanged relieved glances, their own secrets dwarfed by the night's confessions. Poirot turned to me, his voice low. Hastings, the small grey cells, triumphed once more. The vigil has transformed a social ritual into a forum for justice, as is customary in our time. I nodded, the fog outside the windows appearing to lift with the truth. The fire's warmth was no match for the chill of the sins laid plain, but in Edward's rescue there was a promise of renewal. Fairfax was carried away in jail. Lady Beatrix faced her reckoning, and Poirot's sombre meditation remained a witness to the destructive stupidity underneath high society's glitter. Chapter 8. Reputation Restored. The Winslow Conservatory shone with the gentle light of morning, a paradise of glass and green that seems to resist the darkness of the previous week. Sunlight streamed through the big panes, throwing golden patterns on the tiled floor, and beyond the gardens awoke with the sparkle of dew on rose petals. Potted ferns and delicate orchids added tenderness to the atmosphere, with their fronds hinting of nature's gentle persistence. The air brought the faint trill of birdsong, a melody that broke the melancholy that had long engulfed the Winslow estate. I stood behind Hercule Poirot, my eyes drawn to the calm vista, a dramatic contrast to the strain of our recent vigil. Poirot, his small hands clasped neatly behind his back, scanned the scene with satisfaction that softened his sharp features. His green eyes, always alert, reflected the light like polished jade. Mon ami, he continued, his voice soft and sweet, is it not remarkable how the light restores what darkness has obscured, a fitting tableau for the end of our little drama? No! Before I could respond, the conservatory door swung wide with a soft creak, revealing Lady Margaret Winslow. Her silver hair gleamed in the sun, a crown of resilience on top of her stern but tender countenance. Behind her, supported by Inspector Japp's solid arm, came Edward Winslow, pallid, his dark hair untidy but alive, his weary eyes brightening as they met his grandmother's, and a flicker of his old charm returned. Edward! Lady Margaret's voice, which was frequently a bulwark of authority, quivered with intense emotion. She raced onward, her hard mask dissolving into a great relief that seemed to lighten her every stride. She dragged him into an embrace, her hands quivering and framing his face. My boy, my dearest boy, you have returned to me. Edward's voice was hoarse from his struggle and contained a faint smile. Grandmother, I am here. Forgive me for the anxiety I've caused. Poirot stepped forward, his expression one of quiet triumph. Mr. Edward, it is a delight to see you return to those that appreciate you. Our little grey cells have not failed us. Edward glanced to him with thanks, warming his eyes. Poirot, I owe you everything. Thank you for my life for this moment. Poirot inclined his head, his tone humble yet clear. It is my duty, mere justice, it must always prevail. Lady Margaret regained her composure, tears lingering in her eyes, and regarded Poirot with a thankfulness that softened her imperious demeanour. Poirot, you have given me back my heart. Words fail me, but know that you have my eternal gratitude. Madame Poirot answered, his grin soft. Your love for Edward has illuminated the path, a bond so strong that even the darkest greed cannot extinguish. Edward slid into a wicker chair, his strength ebbing, as Lady Margaret's stare sharpened with determination. This scandal, she said, her voice hard once more, must not tarnish the Winslow name. Edward, you shall go abroad, perhaps to Paris or Geneva, till the murmurs pass. We'll call it a respite of health. Discretion is our shield. Edward nodded resolutely despite his exhaustion. Yes, grandmother, I will do as you ask. Poirot's eyes twinkled with approval. A wise choice, madame. In this England, reputation is a currency well guarded. To preserve it, one must occasionally go beyond its borders. Inspector, who waited near the door, cleared his throat. Poe Fairfax is behind bars for a long time, I'd wager. Lady Beatrix Hargrove's participation is under review. She will face the court soon enough. The law's got their teeth in this one. Merchapu noted, his tone was peaceful. The offenders reap what they have sown. Greed is a poison that corrodes the veneer of civilization. As exited, Poirot turned to me, his words a mumble. Hastings, do you not find it heartbreaking underlying the refinement of this world the avarice furs? Yet, in this light, order is restored. I nodded. The conservatory's warmth enveloped us. It's a relief. Poirot Edward is safe and the Winslow name endures. We agreed, his gaze drifting to the gardens as the sun climbed higher. A quiet triumph. Mon ami, the story ends as it should. We took our leave, stepping into the crisp morning air, as Lady Margaret and Edward remained in their reunion, a private solace. Poirot's steps were light. His satisfaction was evident in the faint curve of his moustache. The mystery had unravelled. The guilty faced their punishment, and Hercule, with his inimitable little grey cells, had once again brought order to chaos. As dawn breaks over Mayfair, Hercule Poirot's genius restores order to the Winslow legacy. Edward is returned. The threads of deceit woven from greed and envy, unravelled by the detectives' relentless pursuit to the culprits once shrouded by high society's sheen, now face justice, their schemes laid bare. Yet the echoes of their ambition linger, a haunting reminder of the fragility beneath grandeur. We hope this mystery has enthralled you, dear listeners. Were you surprised by Poirot's deductions, or did you glimpse the truth before the reveal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If high society scandal has captivated your night, please like and subscribe to Nocturnal Tales for more tales of intrigue. Support our storytelling by tipping us via the Super Thanks option beneath this video, joining our membership program, or visiting our Buy Me a Coffee page, link in the description.